Hey, welcome back to the Legacy Premier League. I'm joined with my good friend Jonathan Sukanik. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing well. Got to finish watching a sweet match. Unfortunately, was not that sweet for you, but at least we have
Yeah.
you in the booth. So, what were you thinking at various points in that game?
I was thinking about how dead I was after game two. I kept 5 cards, but I, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast, Card Hoarder, and Scott Monroe, for making this possible. Without them, it would be really, really hard to play Legacy online a lot of the time.
Nice.
But yeah, that game two was kind of brutal. I was thinking about game one. If I'm on the play, given the hands we had, I
Mm.
think I was actually probably favored. But
Yeah. So like Thoughtseize double days would allow you
mhm,
to Thoughtseize on turn one. Nothing too bad can happen on turn two. Then you get
yeah,
to Dreadhorde Arcanist with double days up, and then be able to Thoughtseize and play cantrips for the rest of the game because he didn't have a removal spell in his hand. So
right.
I'm inclined to agree.
So the in particular, when I designed my deck, I expected him to play green creature decks, and Arcanist is actually pretty strong versus them because they
Mhm.
typically aren't able to remove it. Like versus a deck like Elves, Arcanist just snowballs so quickly and it gets out of hand for them. But
Yeah,
you
it kind of
know,
reminds me of just like a very repetitive Jace Vryn's Prodigy, where you're
yeah.
just like constantly flashing back instead of every few turns.
Yeah. But enough about my match. I'm
Mhm.
excited to see this upcoming match. Let's take a look at the playoff bracket.
Mhm.
All right. So it's the last match for tonight, and boy, is it a doozy. We have Javier Dominguez, the world champ, versus Burchett, a mythic championship winner. This is something out of like, I don't know what. This is the match to watch, right?
Yeah, this is like a level of Magic that we would expect in like Mythic Championship 7 or something like that. Like just like very high level play, and I'm just super happy to be able to commentate and watch this with you.
Yeah. To note, it's not an elimination match. The loser of this match will play against Andrea soon. And, just look at the quality of these players. I'm excited to see this match of Magic happen. But let's take a look at the Twitter poll results.
All right, so it looks
Wow.
like about two-thirds, one-third.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. But again, Twitter polls are just popularity contests.
Well, yeah. A lot of people said you would win the last match, but we never know.
Yeah.
Well, if you were voting on this, or maybe you did, which one do you vote for?
I think we have very strong policy. And, well, if I'd vote Javier on momentum, but both of these people are my friends, so I really wouldn't vote.
Okay. From just pure looking at Decklist, though, which one would you say?
Okay, then I would vote Javier.
I would also vote Javier on Decklist, but I do agree that they're just going to be playing super high level Magic, and
Mhm.
they're going to be able to take advantage of any misstep the other one might make, and like it's just going to be a great match. So.
Yeah, I mean, given that, let's take a look at the deck lists to so this might look pretty familiar.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think I've seen this deck at all tonight, but maybe you can walk me through it, Jarvis.
so Autumn and I had a conversation earlier this week about this deck when the Ren ban was announced, because that created cascading effects in terms of legacy, right? Like you don't really know what people are going to do. People are just loose cannons.
Hmm.
And I remember before Modern Horizons came out, I was actually winning a lot online with the Dreadhorde Arcanist Grixis style decks. So I decided to register it and I sketched up what I thought would be a reasonable list. And frankly, Autumn and I are, on similar pages. Like it's probably like 72 out of 75. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we still have the Thoughtseize like Dreadhorde Arcanist
yeah,
package where you're able to kind of like take a removal spell and then like stick this threat that's gonna be able to keep on producing advantage. Then we got the
hmm
usual suspects of the Delverger Mega Angler, like the threat package with the
hmm
cantrips and Day's Force of Will. So kind of just typical stuff.
yeah. But however, the next deck list less difficult. Oh boy, the menace that has been banned in Modern is back. It's ready to, I don't know, zombie attack another format, I suppose. But for those of you who haven't seen this deck, uh, this was probably the premier Modern deck, and frankly, it is probably an appropriate power level deck for Legacy as well. Um,
Yeah.
the major upgrades from the Modern version to this one are the lands are obviously better. Uh, you get access to Putrid Imp, which I believe is a massive upgrade. Um,
Definitely.
Oftentimes in the modern version, you just be stuck with your graveyard reliant cards like Vengevine in your hand, and you wouldn't be able to get them out. But Putrid Imp is perfect. First off, it's a zombie for Gravecaller. Second off, it just lets you discard cards from your hand. And third, you can use it to convoke out Hogaak, which is a pretty big deal.
And
Uh,
it's a 2/2 flyer.
It is a 2/2 fire, and it can't block generally when that is occurring. Um, for those of you who may not have played with the full-on combo in this deck, there is a combo where you can essentially mill out your opponent. It involves having Hogaak, Altar of Dementia, and Bridge from Below. So the idea is you first start milling yourself with Hogaak, making zombie tokens every time you sack it to Altar of Dementia, which will then bring back either you might mill some blood gas or some grave colors or something like that, and you might be able to cast them. And if you hit two bridges every time you sacrifice the Hogaak, you'll make two zombies. You can use those new two zombies to convoke out the Hogaak again, and so forth. So eventually you can get to a board state where you've milled yourself for a bunch, have an enormous graveyard, then just start milling your opponent for 8 each time, and then they die.
Wow.
Yeah, that I probably went a little bit longer than I need to, but that is something that can happen. Notably, one deck you could not do this against is Sneak and Show because of the presence of Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. But obviously that's not a matchup you have to worry about here, so you're allowed to full blown try to mill your opponent out.
Yeah. So the way I kind of think about the combo that you just talked about is it's actually just like turn 2 or 3 Splendor Twin. Like
Yes, the
like
good way
Altar
of putting
doesn't
it.
do that much without Hogaak, but like
Yeah.
what is slightly different is the Altar can actually find you the Hogaak that can allow you to get
Yep.
going.
Anyways,
Yeah,
I think I would give a slight edge to the Hogaak deck in this matchup, but I do believe the well, probably more than slight, frankly, but I think the players are ready to go.
yeah.
Ooh, Javier is on the play.
I I don't think I can keep his 7. Like just
No,
not having a land for the Faithless Looting just means that you're stuck on one land too often.
yeah. If that swamp had been a red source, like a Badlands, do you keep?
Yeah, Badlands would probably be one of the
Yeah.
goodest lands there.
Goodest lands. Um, so the nice thing about this Hogaak deck is it doesn't really obviously it matters how many cards you have in your hand, but it doesn't really matter how many cards you have in your hand, right?
Hmm. And how about from Autumn side?
Um, well, I don't really think you're allowed to mulligan that hand, but it's not like the most insane hand. The real
Yeah.
problem is your only card to pitch the Forcible is the cantrip you need to sort of develop.
Yeah, so one thing that's difficult is you have a choice between force willingness or not. I feel like if it's force and negation, it feels slightly better, but
Yep. Mhm.
Javier did mulligan, and he is keeping a large percentage of like risky, like looting hands. So
Yep.
I could see Autumn wanting to force will this.
Yeah. I think this is a disciplined force of will. Like you saw Javier Mulligan. Oh, and another cantrip off the top really,
It's
really
clutch.
makes his decision look very good, right?
Hmm.
Um, I was about to say, if you let the looting resolve and just two Vengevines were dumped, how do you ever win? Like you're just gonna take 8 repeatedly until you die.
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the advantages that Javier's deck has in the matchup of being able to kind of sidestep how counterspells work.
Hmm.
But that partly justifies why Autumn just like had to force of will that Faithless Looting, even though it's a spell with flashback, it kind of produces just an average case scenario where you're just going to lose. And it turns out like even just one Vengevine on turn 2 would have been tough. And Javier, just from his hand, would have been able to discard Vengevine and Gravecrawler, then cast his Carrion Feeder and bring
Yep.
back Gravecrawler, and then subsequently the Vengevine.
Yeah, it gets out of control very quickly. Interesting, the Ponder here sees Delver, Scalding Tarn, Wasteland, so Crisis averted for missing second land drop.
Yep. We got
My
that one on
question is,
lockdown.
do you really want that Delver?
I'm also questioning the Wasteland. So the
Yeah,
Wasteland, it's
it's
like
weird.
Javier's keeping all of his one land looting hands. So all the times he misses, I kind of want to Wasteland him.
Yeah, but if Javier plays a land here, you probably just don't even bother, I think.
Yep. At which point you do kind of just want the Delver if you want to set up like a clock where you're going to be able to Delver and have lightning bolt. So I understand Autumn's like decision here.
Interesting decision from Javier to play out both of the 1-drops. I think a lot of people would try to wait to trigger that Vengevine, but I think Javier's just going to go Zeus style here.
Yeah, and it's Zoo style, but like if Autumn doesn't address this Carrion Feeder, then Javier can just make the Carrion Feeder outside of future Lightning Bolt range by doing the loop of just like sacrifice Gravecrawler to my Carrion Feeder, play Gravecrawler, and then you just keep on doing this.
So one thing Autumn could potentially do is fetch for... Well, actually, you could just play the Delver, period. But the question is, which removal spell do you want to use on the Carrion Feeder, right?
Yes, so it's kind of hard because when you do it this way, it allows you to like. Well, this is just casting Dreadhorde Arcanist, which isn't the same as the Delver. But if you were to fetch and then play Delver of Secrets, you're tipping your hand that you have Lightning Bolt in your hand, even though Fatal Push is kind of more valuable because it can hit more things, or it can hit things when they get out of range, or kill a Vengevine. But you would have also lost the ability to scry on your Delver. So it was a pretty tough decision, but I actually really like this Dreadhorde Arcanist play because you have Fatal Push for the Carrion Feeder.
Yeah, I actually question if the Bolt or Push is more valuable. I think the Bolt might be more valuable for trying to finish a game where the board gets clogged.
Yeah, it looks like Carrion Feeder and Gravecrawler have the same first line of text, which is pretty relevant.
Really, this was one of the issues playing Hogaak versus Red Prowess. None of your creatures can block!
Yeah, it's really tough when your creatures can't intercept.
Yeah. Oh, love it. Jungle Lions.
Yep.
That foul is a pretty nice draw off the top, but honestly, Autumn had more looks at that foul if they wanted to, because, I mean, you know what Arcanist does? It snowballs a game.
Yep. Yeah, it's really just a 2-mana aggressive Draystern's Prodigy. It's kind of like just so aggressively costed in everything it does. It's almost like it was designed for Legacy, but not in a way that would break Legacy.
Right. It's kind of weird. I think it's a actually beautifully designed card for that reason.
Right.
So Days, Fatal Push, Ponder.
So the Ponder's kind of nice, but the rest doesn't feel great.
So if you draw the Days, you can actually pitch the Days to Force instead.
Ooh, that's true. And you know you're flipping your Delver if you want to play one this turn.
Exactly. So I don't... Oh. Huh. Okay, so Autumn did shuffle.
Yeah, that was my original inclination. I felt like your average draw was better than what that Ponder was yielding without a shuffle effect. So this is a very heads-up play. So killing the Carrion Feeder right now prevents drawing Hogaak from going badly for you, so you don't have to blow this Forcible sooner.
I was about to make that exact point, but you beat me to it.
Shazam.
Shazam.
But we can see some interesting stuff here where so I'm interested as to whether or not this Stitcher supplier gets countered.
I think it's happening.
Yeah, and that really makes sense. That shows Autumn's awareness of this matchup. So just understanding that you kind of just need to attack the enablers, because once things start getting going, a single counterspell isn't really going to stop them.
Yeah. Really, the only high value targets to force there are that or Altar. Like, so the Altar got cast second, obviously, but Honestly, the Ultra's not that scary here without another creature.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Stitcher Supplier might have felt like the prize to me.
Yep.
So like I would have led on the altar as bait.
Funnily enough, there is a Fatal Push in the graveyard, but I don't really think you want to Fatal Push his Gravecaller. I think that just incentivizes Javier to try to mill himself for 2, and I don't think that really accomplishes much.
Well, but aren't you just giving the optionality then? Like the times where Javier doesn't do it, then that means it was better for him to keep it. So I don't know if this fatal push has more value than forcing a decision that might have happened anyways, but taking out the 5 or 10% of the time where Javier
Sure.
wouldn't have wanted to do it.
So counterpoint is there's a Vengevine in Javier's graveyard. If you push this Gravecaller, that gives more outs to just recast the Vengevine, and I think you might need to use that push to kill the Vengevine later.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that the fatal push can just have utility later on, whereas I'm saying I don't think it's going to have utility later on, so you might as well force it, like force the decision.
Yeah.
It looks like Autumn agrees with you, so.
Yeah, so I also think if you actually kill the Gravecaller, bringing back the Vengevine, I think leads more often to a kill than you might expect. Because as a mill for 4, you might hit a bridge or something. And look at this. Javier's just casting mill ourselves for 2.
I mean, we have more mill ourselves for 2 now.
Yeah. Obviously, the Sapphire would have been kind of nice, but you can't pick what you get.
So one thing that's also interesting about Dreadhorde Arcanist is compared to a lot of the other cards that we've seen played in Delver, it's actually one of the slowest clocks. So it produces this advantage, but it's no Gurmag Angler, it's no Young Pyromancer, it's no True Name Nemesis. It doesn't really kill very quickly. Like, look at Javier's life total. There's been like quite a bit of combat, and Javier's at 15.
Oh, we flipped to something, but it seems like it was garbage. It was Thoughtseize. Really not what you want here.
Yeah, but we take the flip. I mean, the flip
yeah, of course we
very
take
much
the
value.
flip. Yeah, I'm trying to think. No, you still don't push. It's 5 damage. I'm questioning if you bolt here.
I'm like 80% sure you bolt.
5 plus 6, that's 11, puts them to 4.
With like a fetch land in play, which I don't think is the most relevant, but I don't know if this lightning bolt's doing much else. And I could see times where we play just a chain of cantrips and the mana could matter, which is why I was 80% to bolt.
Yeah.
But
So the one reason not to cast this bolt is to be able to cack their bridge from blows, which I think is actually more important.
Ooh, I did forget about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think being able to hit.
Yeah.
Like there are a subset.
That's the wrong place from bridge blow, my friend.
It's okay. We have a card that gets it there, though.
Yeah.
I think that's a good observation you had. Like being able to bolt your own card probably cuts off more things than the times where it's just a huge like slew of cantrips. So I like that.
So I think if you bolt one of your Arcanists, because that's like obviously the worst creature, like the second Arcanist is not doing much, right?
Yeah. It still buys Javier a decent amount of time though. And he might still be able to do things, but I do like attacking first here because you're not really going to be playing 2 creatures in the same turn, and Benchvine's the only card with haste because Bloodcast wouldn't have haste with Autumn at 14.
I think Javier's just a little bit short of doing things, considering it exiling the bridge.
Right, but so Javier does get to recast this Gravecrawler depending on what Autumn chooses to do with this Lightning Bolt. So if this Lightning Bolt goes after the zombie, or in response to the fetch line. So that's one thing that's interesting. If Javier cracks the fetch line first, then there's actually less opportunity for things to go wrong. In some regards, but he's able to get back the Bloodghast now. So I do like his decision to not fetch, but there's a lot of subtlety, and Javier being, one of the top Magic players right now, knows a lot about how the sequencing works and how to optimize this. So it's kind of being put on full display here.
So one reason Autumn's not bolting is that it's actually literally lethal next turn.
Mm-hmm.
So Autumn is weighing the probability that they die from this board state. Is that a Hogaak?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. We might be forced to pull the trigger on this bolt.
Yeah, which is why I
Yeah.
was considering to lightning bolt the zombie token when the fetch line was cracked, because then there's no zombies, and then it's just the blood gas coming back, and then the blood gas would have been sacrificed, and then that's still zombie. Okay, never mind, doesn't matter.
I
Well,
think. Wow, this spiraled kind of out of control. I'm not sure how much of this Autumn could have prevented.
it's the Gak that smiles back.
um,
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a window that could have happened to, like,
there,
where you can lightning bolt your Arcanist, but
there is with the Hogaak and the Vengevine returns on the stack, right?
yeah,
Well, actually, but then you still have the gas in the grave car. So it had to be when the first zombie token was made, I think.
yeah, like when the fetch line was being cracked, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Autumn might
Yes.
just die this turn, even through the lightning bolt now.
Yeah, but from Autumn's point of view, if Javier had like an unlucky like mill or two,
Yeah.
even with like a bunch of power in play, you can still win with like just top decking another lightning bolt. Then you can just lightning bolt for 12. But let's see. So when there's zombie token in play and the fetch line being sacked, if we kill our own thing, then the zombie token like can mill ourselves again, but that doesn't really help that much. So
Yeah.
you definitely guarantee that like a bridge would have left, but not necessarily that another
Yeah.
bridge, like another bridge might have been milled.
Right. It might not even be better, really.
Yeah, because it also removes a turn.
Yeah, exactly. That's the risk reward analysis you have to make, right?
Yeah, so the part that we could have scripted though was we knew that the board state would be Bloodghast, Bloodghast, Gravecrawler, one zombie token, and Hogaak was already in the graveyard, so that means Hogaak comes into play too. And there was, I believe it was just one Vengevine at the time, but he might mill like, I don't know, one or two Vengevines. So
This is cute. This is the old trick. You use your first Hogaak to convoke it, then in response sack it.
yep, yeah.
Did you play this deck at all when it was legal?
I chose to play Jeskai Control at that Pro Tour and went 2-8, where I played against
Wow.
Hogaak 7 times.
That was not smart.
I did what I wanted to do.
I believe you did do that.
Except for win. I definitely didn't do that one. But
it as a wise man once said, you probably lost that during the deck selection phase.
I did beat Hogaak all the times I played against Unlimited, but that's probably because I played Red Black Unlimited, which might have been the best
Yeah.
thing playing Constructed.
Yeah.
But yeah. I haven't played Jeskai for a month or two. I'm a recovering Jeskai player.
You know, that's great. I remember you played Tron.
Yes, I did play Tron at both the Invitational and to a top 16 finish at a Star City Games. So.
Oh, that's smart. I also played Tron. I didn't do as well as you did, though. So what is the bolt going after?
It has to be like your own creature, right?
Yeah.
Like at
The
some
problem
point,
is
you're just trying to maximize how many bridges you
Yeah.
get, and I do like going after your own creature in response to some amount of bridge triggers, because the way bridge is phrased is that it has to
Yep.
be in the graveyard for the tokens to be able to be produced.
Yep.
So
So now Javier cannot. Well, 3 bridges are going to get killed. So Javier would have to mill. Oh wait, we can just deterministically kill our opponent still, because you just mill yourself for 18 cards, then mill your opponent out.
yeah, I agree.
Or actually, we just have enough mill in play. That's kind of
Yes.
sick. Yeah. This is fine. Autumn's like, oh, guess we're dead.
Probably my least favorite part of Hogaak is that you don't get to say the words "I've demonstrated a loop," so you know it's not truly broken.
It was pretty broken. Um, so
So
I
you have some experience with this Hogaak stuff. Tell me what you're sideboarding here.
honestly, since the deck lists are open, I would really not side very much. I would side in a few answers for Cage. Specifically, Assassin's Trophy is really good versus the Delver deck as constructed. There are no basic lands, so it's just a straight up terminate for the Cage. Or you could just kill one of their like. The nice thing about Trophy is that you can just play a normal game of Magic with Assassin's Trophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of value that as like an anti-hate card because I think a lot of the time people play anti-hate cards that are not good in that regard. Like they're only good versus the hate cards, but Trophy is excellent because, well, Autumn Deck has literally no basic lands.
Yep. Yeah. Being able to play Vindicate at instant speed for 2 mana is pretty cool.
So from Autumn side, we gain access to a bunch of graveyard hate.
And Force of Negation, which I like a lot.
Yeah. Force of Negation, Faithless Looting is really, really, really good. That game was pretty close, all things considered. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
like the board state, you know, when we saw the like Javier win screen, like obviously it looks overwhelming, but there's just so much play throughout the game, and
Agreed.
Autumn was pretty much one itch turn away from winning.
Yeah, I mean, literally, the bolt would represent 6 damage, which is a lot of damage, right?
Yep. So besides Force and Negation, what else are you bringing in? So yeah, there's the Digger's Cage.
I think those Plague Engineers are coming in, which
Yeah,
makes
so you
sense.
get to name Zombie,
Yeah.
which helps in
It,
a lot more regards than you might think. So besides like stopping Gravecrawler, just making the bridge from below tokens one smaller prevents like
mhm.
as much milling from Hogaak. And Hogaak is a zombie too, right? So that would be a 7/7.
No, it's an Avatar.
Okay, that makes no sense. Uh,
Well, it's a crumbling necropolis. It's an avatar of a crumbling necropolis. I don't know what you expect.
yeah, I don't understand how we go from a crumbling Grixis mana land to a broken green black card.
It's actually an arisen necropolis, I think.
Oh, well, I only make bad jokes. All right, so
So
what are you
funny
playing on
thing
turn
here.
one here?
I like attacking.
Yeah,
Like so the real reason to play Delver on turn one, I think, is you know you're unfavored in long games versus the Hogaak deck, so you should try to kill them.
yep. And just being on the play, I usually estimate my opponent starting at 15 and starting with an extra card. And
Yep.
like Delver really cuts down on that. And this is just the typical like Delver land Delver days like scenario. And
Mhm.
that's really what you want in your Delver decks.
No, blind flip is disappointing, but honestly, Autumn's hand's pretty darn good.
Yeah, so you're able to suss out like a subset of things that are in
Uh-huh.
Javier's hand from him leading on Swamp Citrus Supplier. So the Thoughtseize is actually good against a subset of those hands when you like just think about the iterations of what would cause that board state.
So remember how I was talking about how a trophy lets you play a normal game of Magic? Force of
Mhm.
Vigor, completely the opposite.
Yeah, and
Not really what Javier wanted to draw a second of, I think.
right. So from your point of view, do you think the Force of Vigor is too overboard when you could just bring in the 4 trophies? Because you're not really hitting like that many cards, and then in the fair games you do have trophies. So I was wondering what your opinion is on that.
I think it's definitely a close decision. I probably wouldn't personally not side in the forces because you know Autumn only has 2 cages because the deck lists are open.
Yep.
But it's obviously close.
Yeah, and a subset of the times where you have Force of Vigor, you also have access to Faithless Looting, so the opportunity cost is lower than it is in other decks, in like a high velocity Faithless Looting type of deck.
Yeah.
So, all right, so here we see cracking a fetch and then playing a ponder.
Yeah, looks pretty good to me. Was that a shuffle?
It was awfully quick, so either very decisive or shuffle. Yeah, it was a shuffle. Okay. And then this one.
Huh. Do you know the opponent's hand there? I'm trying to remember.
Well, the Thoughtseize knows about the first Force of Vigor, but and the Vengevine, but I don't think the second Force of Vigor, if I recall correctly.
So the question I had there was, you could make an argument for playing Gurmag there, right?
No, there are only 5 cards in the graveyard.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you can't make an argument for that then.
I can argue against doing it.
True. Are we gonna see Stone Rain? Okay, no.
I was kind of looking forward to Stone Rain. I won't lie. My inner Patrick Sullivan just wanted it to happen.
I really didn't put peacefully on a Stone Rain sort of vibe, but you know.
Every time they cast a Legacy, all he would do is talk about how he just wants to see like Wastelands and Stone Rains and people with no lands in play.
So what you're saying is Peacefully is actually a Maverick player at heart?
I'm saying Peace Sully is who he is.
Okay, just checking.
So flipping to a Lightning Bolt, which is actually pretty good. So right now Javier is kind of in a, I guess you could say, like feeble position. Like he's not really doing much, and you really just want him dead. Do you know what card really makes people dead? The real big
Angler.
fish. Yeah,
real big fish.
Yeah, I have nicknames for so many cards that I've cast way too many times.
That's a pretty good nickname for that one.
Yeah,
like, have you ever actually looked at the art of Gurmag Angler?
Yeah, it's kind of beautiful.
It's using a human as the bait.
Okay, not that beautiful then. I didn't notice that.
I've noticed it. I've looked at it.
Wait, you mean that little thing?
Isn't that a human?
I don't think so. I think that's just like a tentacle from it. Like it's from an anglerfish, right? So it's like, hey, I have a thing.
Okay, maybe I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, these are based off of things in real life. Like, I'm sure there are Gurmag anglers in like the Marianas Trench or something.
Well, probably not a Gurmag angler, but definitely anglerfish, right?
Yeah. It's the right angle of attack.
All right. Wait, Javier didn't force a vigor.
Sometimes you just don't want it enough. Yeah, that was actually kind of interesting. But
I mean, I think we were supposed to force pitching force and hoping to, it doesn't like
if he thinks the game is lost already, then maybe just not tipping his hand that he has force of vigor can make sense.
Autumn already knew about it from a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So like you literally gain nothing by not doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here now, so
yeah, we are here.
So does anything change for you from the Hogaak side when you're on the play instead of the draw?
I think you're slightly more likely to combo kill your opponent if you're inclined to go that route, but it doesn't really look like Javier is pursuing that. So it's actually kind of interesting. You can choose how much discard to put in your deck, and that would dictate the pace of the game. Because what discard does, it elongates games, right?
Yeah.
Because you spend 1 mana trading your discard spell for their best card in hand.
Yep.
The question is, do you actually want to do that versus the post-board configuration versus Autumn? I'm not sure. And that's like basically a decision you have to decide.
Well, so also I kind of hearken to this a lot. Like when you're in the play, you have less cards to work with. So when one of yours is a discard spell and your opponent has more cards to work with, it's not like you're not doing the best thing you could be doing on the play.
I also think one thing that sort of entails doing with the Hogaak deck is you're diluting your engine by having more discard in, and that may not be something you want to do.
So are you keeping Javier's hand?
Absolutely.
Great. Are you keeping Autumn's hand?
That one's tougher.
I don't think I can do it. Like, you don't really have a threat. You do have a force of will, and I do kind of want a force of will, but if I'm losing my card, I want to be able to do something with the time that I acquired.
Yeah,
And every hand with a cage feels better than this. So like when you have a card that's so powerful in terms of hate.
the problem is we only have 2 cages in our sideboard, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that that's like a kicker for mulliganing. Like if I didn't
Sure.
have cage in my deck at all, I would consider mulliganing. But the fact that there's such a powerful like two
Mhm.
of that I can mulligan to, at least like the first one's not literally free, but
Right.
London's been nice.
Oh, yeah, that is a good point. London has warped these mulligans a lot, I think.
Yeah, I used to
Oh.
not know how to mulligan, and it became a lot easier because the answer is yes.
Oh, nice. Woo, this is a much better hand, I think.
Yeah, two pair, so has
2 pair, 3 lands kicker.
yeah, exactly. Has a lot of play to it. You could probably just put back a land, or it's either land or a lightning bolt, but your brainstorm on average is going to see another land, so you can probably just have the two lands, like
Yeah.
two pair.
Yeah. Unless if you put a fetch back, then it's not really a 2 pair, but
They're
sure.
two lands.
Anyways, this is a interesting decision for Autumn, which, well, first off, does Autumn keep?
Right. I can still see the argument to I want to have threat plus cage, and that being like kind of what we're talking about before, that when you London
Mhm.
mulligan, it like entices you to mulligan again, and we do see that. I did forget about the surgical in the sideboard, so that's even more hate. And
Uh, One issue with Surgical is I think it's actually really good with that Arcanist. So if you think
mhm,
the Surgical will buy enough time, then it'll be good.
mhm.
But it's pretty tough. It's a tough sell, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a 5 card hand. You have to lower your standards for hands you keep, right?
yeah, or in this case, legacies. Yeah, instead of lowering your standards.
Supplier flips, looting, bloodgas, 2 lands. All right.
Yeah, not terrible, especially because like your
Yeah.
fair plan is just good
Mhm.
enough some subset of the time.
Yeah, and also don't forget about the Carrion Feeder Stitcher Supplier combo that sees a lot more cards. I wonder how good the surgical is going to end up being, because there's actually a very real chance that it becomes insane this game.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so
really depend. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was just thinking about our ability next turn to play
Hmm.
Featured Imp, discard Benchvine, then play Carrion Feeder. Or yeah, I guess like it would have to be in that order if you want to get the Benchvine into play, but then you're not maximizing the times where your Carrion Feeder sacrificing the Citrus Supplier also hits
Yeah,
things. So that's
yeah,
like a weird like sequencing thing you have to deal with. And that's not even factoring do you want to play around surgical extraction and what's the best way to do that?
yeah,
Because
exactly. Yeah,
I don't know. It's just a lot. Like to some extent, I kind of wish that we didn't have a fetch land, that we could play a
mhm.
non-fetch land and then trigger the blood gas, and that might entice a surgical. Then we'd be like Vengevine.
Yeah. So I remember this being a huge debate. There were so many weird micro decisions in the Hogaak deck, but the deck was so powerful that oftentimes it didn't matter if you took like the 6th best line, your opponent would just be buried in a sea of zombies no matter what.
Hmm.
But I think here it might matter a little bit more because we don't have like an overwhelming hand, right?
Right. It might just be like a D, E, or F of zombies instead of a C.
Yeah. Or just elementals, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Vengevine. Okay, yeah. You're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
testing me on these card types. First we have an Avatar, the Last
Avatar.
Airbender. Then we have some Elemental.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember all of the random creature types.
Yeah, I just know how to make bad jokes. So we both play our role pretty well though.
I agree.
All
Uh,
right, so after a long contemplation on the preordain, we end up with a brainstorm in our hand. So now really just thinking about the surgical extraction. There's not really many other decisions to make, which slightly tips the hand as to like what Autumn has, but you'd
well,
rather like tip your hand slightly and make the correct play
yeah.
than like
So,
another
so
scenario.
For those of you who are thinking about it, the decision is whether to surgical Bloodghast right away or not. Because if Javier goes fetching like this, you can't surgical it.
Right, but I agree with Autumn's assessment that Bloodghast is not the prize you would want. Like,
Right.
Vengevine, you can always get a Vengevine from the graveyard with a surgical extraction, because there's no way for them to just play a second creature
Right.
again, like, while it's on the stack. Like,
No,
it's
it would
always
be
going to be
the.
there to be surgical.
In fact, it would be the third creature if you somehow could do that, so it just wouldn't even
Right.
trigger.
Exactly. Yeah, the second creature only comes once a turn.
And so now you're seeing Javier contemplate. All right, which order do you cast these spells in? Which
Yep.
is
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
I think I agree with this order because this is guaranteed Vengevine, right?
Yep. I agree with that too. So it has a lower ceiling but a much higher floor, and just Vengevine is good enough to beat Delver sometimes.
Yeah. It's a 4/3 haste. How do you ever beat that?
I've lost to it enough times.
With the surgical extraction paying 2 life. But here's the other thing. Look at how much power Javier just has in play right now.
Yeah,
It's
and
not 0.
yeah, it's a little bit more than 0. I mean, you're probably more of a math guy than I am, but definitely more than 0. And one thing that's also just cool about what's going on is like from Javier's point of view is that besides the fact that you have like a zombie ancestral recall in play with this carrion feeder, like your lands also feed the carrion feeder, because now like your blood
Yeah.
gas can just sack, and then every fetch land is gonna be 2 more counters. So it's like your surgical is able to interact with the unfair portion, but you can still just lose the fair portion of the deck.
Oh yeah. This deck is very good. And in for one. Javier's never going to miss an attack.
Yeah, he's definitely one to serve with his creatures.
Yeah. Force of Will is not really what you want there. Actually, it's not terrible, but it's not great either, I think, is
Yeah,
the actual
it's just
reality.
generic blue card, right? Like you
Yeah.
had Force of Negation, but now like if you get to counter a Hogaak that uses enough resources, then like you have the optionality of having a Force of Will instead. But I think I found a good target for these forces.
Yeah, probably have to force some negation it.
Yep, you get to save a point of life, which is nice, and the card doesn't go to the graveyard, so it's one less card for Hogaak.
Yep. Although I think if Javier had a Hogaak, it would just be in play by this point very easily. You have like tons of creatures. But yeah, I agree with protecting the Arcanist. I think it's the way you get out of this game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're behind, that's really what you gotta think about. Like, how do I win from here? Like the what separates a lot of like middling Magic players from like these higher echelons of players is just like how you mindset and how you phrase things to yourself can be
Yeah.
very important. So like how do I not lose is like I guess a good starting point, but that's not the mindset. We don't want to be like the mindset of not losers. We want to be in the mindset of winners. And that
Agreed.
is definitely what both these players have.
All right. Nothing of help from the graveyard. Hmm.
Yeah, so
So
Javier's making sure to put this Karen feeder out of bolt range.
so technically speaking, Javier missed exactly one Bloodghast trigger.
Hmm.
It's when Javier played the land and cast trophy immediately.
Yep.
I'm not sure that's going to matter too much. It might, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know what you mean.
also keep in mind it's like infinity o'clock for Europeans, so
Yeah, you're allowed to lose maybe even another +1/+1 counter.
at like 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, as opposed to 3 a.m. at night.
Oh, God,
Yeah, that's a better reaction than what I got at work the other day when I said the same thing.
Well, see, I'm more receptive to your dad jokes because I enjoy making those jokes as well.
Yeah.
All right.
So, what's your ideal preordain here?
Probably like land plague engineer.
Yeah, fish isn't terrible too. Just like a gourmet
Yeah.
angler. Like it doesn't fight the feeder yet, but it presents a good clock. And then maybe you could draw like fatal push. Fatal push isn't terrible too, because this Karen feeder is really like what you're losing to in the short term because you would be able to block blood gas.
Oh my god.
Oh, double ancestral recall. Give me, give me.
It's probably not great. Well, that's not the worst. Depends on what's hit. Oh,
It's okay.
well,
The second
that's
ancestral
bad.
recall was even better.
Yeah, that's not good. Real issue with this deck is it's not good at beating free 8/8s from the graveyard.
It's not free. You have to tap 2 creatures. It's
Look,
like
you know what I meant.
yeah, it's. I mean, he literally did play double ancestral recall. It was 1 mana, draw 6.
Yeah, Javier is probably gonna win.
Wow. I wish I could come up with that.
What, the probably gonna win part?
Yeah.
So one cute thing Javier is doing here is just using Hogaak as a zombie factory, because the
Yeah.
Delver deck is really not good at dealing at a board state that looks like this.
Nice.
All right, I feel like that was probably the expected outcome, but
Yeah, it's just hard for Delver to do things in those scenarios. Like sometimes you're able to lightning bolt your own creature, but as we saw in game one, it just like isn't enough sometimes, especially with Alter being able to do this like combo where okay, on the stack, I'm gonna do all these other tricks. Like there's just a lot of things going on. And even if you are like precise in when you're gonna try to remove these bridge from blows, you can still just lose.
yeah, but that was an exciting match to watch. I mean, Autumn took game 2, I believe, still.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Autumn took
I think
game
so.
2.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Because I remember we talked about playing draw twice. Yeah.
yeah. But let's go over what happened for the rest of the night while looking at the bracket. So first we had Kenobi versus Bryant, and the matchup was Death and Taxes versus Rogue Delver after Ren got banned. And honestly, like I don't love that matchup for Rogue without Ren, so Taxes won.
Yeah, makes sense.
Then round 2 we had Mengucci playing Bug Delver versus Bonde playing Sneak and Show. Historically speaking, I do like that matchup for Bug Delver, but it's a function of how much discard. And indeed, we saw Mengucci win the match. Round 3 was a weirder matchup that I don't think you see too often. It was Abzan Maverick versus Nick Fit, Phil Gallagher, and Pleasant Kenobi. And honestly, I would have thought the deck with Pernicious Steed was going to win, but that's why you play the games out, right?
It won that game.
Well, sure. The game that Deed was cast to kill literally all of the creatures was won by the deck that cast the Deed.
The deed was done.
Yeah, the Deed was done. And in the winners bracket, myself versus Julian. Julian took it in quick 2-0 fashion. Honestly, sometimes you lose, right? And
Well, sometimes you lose. You can't speak about me. I'm still undefeated in my LPL.
and we just watched round 5 of Javier playing Hogaak, Jund Hogaak versus Autumn playing Grixis Delver, and Hogaak was victorious in 3. So I think next week a lot of exciting things are going to happen. The format's going to shift. Instead of just playing one deck on one deck, it's going to be 3-on-3 Iron Man.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? It means players register 3 decks, including their starter deck. Winner stays on their deck, and loser has to pick a new deck until one player has all their decks eliminated and loses the match. And that's going to happen next Tuesday for production reasons. And also, American holiday after that on Thursday. So I think people might be busy on Wednesday or whatever. But next Tuesday, going to be a lot of good matches of watch of 3 decks versus 3 decks.
Yeah, and those are just like fantastic matches to watch. There's like so much like not only mind games but like matchup analysis, like equity decisions, just like anything could happen. Like last LPL was the first time I got to commentate, and they start off with these Iron Man rounds, and it was just like really fun to just see what people are bringing to the table, what people would
Agreed.
use as their anchor, what they would use as their opener, and you've been there yourself. Like it must be a blast,
Oh, yeah.
like picking the decks as well, and not only the decks but the order.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the time I would just randomize which deck I would start with, to be not exploitable.
Yeah,
But
just
it,
like you're trying to play towards GTO Nash equilibrium. So
yeah, exactly. Honestly, that's a probably a better strategy if the deck lists are open. If they're
mhm.
closed, then it's not. It kind of doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I like to spend like maybe 2 or 3 days with my useless psychology like analysis and stuff that really doesn't matter. So I guess I'm the exploitable one in the end. But if everyone else randomizes, then I'm having more fun, right?
Yeah, you are having more fun than everyone else just rolling a die or going to random.org to see what happens.
Yeah.
Um,
So
anyway,
uh, one more time, we're gonna thank our sponsors. So Wizards of the Coast, Card Hoarder, Scott Monroe, all great entities, people, everything. Thanks. And thanks to you guys too. And thanks to you, Jarvis.
and thank you, Jonathan. We'll be back next Tuesday.
Yep. Tuesday. Remember,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Yeah. LPL Tuesday.
LPL Tuesday. See ya.
See ya.